Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Windalco workers back to work after days of protest action. Do your work or be decommissioned. That warning to newly installed Manchester JPs. And later in sports, reggae boys move up in FIFA rankings. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Sandy Williams. Here are the details. Scores of security guards this morning staged a protest at the offices of the Ministry of Labour after being struck off the roster of their respective companies. Security companies are requiring the guards to sign new contracts that would see them losing much of the benefits they would have accumulated during their years of service. The guards transitioned from independent contractors to employees on April 1. That's based on a ruling made by the Supreme Court on September 23 last year. Workers employed to Backside company Windalco have returned to work after the Industrial Disputes Tribunal indicated that no further discussion on their grosses will be facilitated if the protest continues. President of the Union of Clerical, Administrative and Supervisor Employees, Vincent Morrison, said the employees resumed duties at midnight. The IDT wrote to the union on Tuesday after a refrain from industrial action order issued on Sunday was ignored. A meeting was held with the employees on the third day of protest yesterday, and an agreement reached for return to normality in the operations at Windalco. Mr. Morrison, who was speaking on the morning agenda on Power 106 today, says UCASE is awaiting a call from the IDT for the continuation of talks.
It take over 11 months. The others take about long, maybe 2 years. When the management get the claim the last time, they told the delegates, look, I'll meet you at the tribunal. We don't believe that we should be going back to the tribunal 4 times to discuss the things that we have discussed 3 times. Under Dwight Nelson, under Marshall Smith, and under Donny Roberts. We shouldn't believe we was going back there 4 times with the same issue when we can sit down at the local level and have the matter sorted out. That is a fair position that we have taken. And, we hope that there's no problem going forward.
The more than 600 workers went on strike Monday to protest against the breakdown in wage talks between UC Russell and operators of Windalco and their union. Meanwhile, the protracted wage negotiations between dental surgeons and the government could be resolved next week. That's the indication from UK's President Vincent Morrison. Speaking with TVJ News, Mr. Morrison said after a meeting yesterday, the Ministry of Finance is to consult with the Ministry of Health regarding one of the sticking points for the dental surgeons. He says it's expected that following the consultation between the two ministries, the dental surgeons would be in a better position to sign off on the agreement.
We're very close to a settlement, but sometimes we're very close to a settlement, but there are 1 and 2 issues which stands out, and this is basically the problem. The Ministry of Finance, they have agreed to do some consultation with the Ministry of Health about some certain issues during they agreed to start the process from as early as tomorrow, so that certainly by next week they will be in a position to get back to us on those issues. But what I can say is that we have settled most of the items of claim, and I believe as soon as the Ministry of Finance gets the clarification they're seeking from the Ministry of Health, then certainly I think by this time next week we ought to have an agreement in place.
In other news, Custos of Manchester Garfield Green has charged JPs to intervene in domestic disputes where they are aware of them, to offer mediation, guidance and leadership. Prince Moore has the details.
Speaking at a recent commissioning ceremony of JPs in Mandeville, Manchester, Custos Green warned JPs not to become difficult for residents to find after being commissioned, but to provide the service they have committed to. He reminded JPs that they can be decommissioned for not being active.
One of the things that is noticeable among JPs is that they disappear after being commissioned. They think that JP means just profiling. It means justice of the peace. So don't misuse it. But I will warn you not to be among those who do so. You can be considered as delinquent and be decommissioned. I don't think I have to repeat that. I see the heads move very fast. Please don't. All right? So I'm encouraging you to get involved in activities of the Manchester Justice of the Peace Association and be relevant in your communities.
Meanwhile, speaking at the same event, Administration Officer for Manchester Deputy Superintendent of Police, Elsa Smith, urged JPs to interact more closely and partner with the police in the parish.
As you seek to navigate your space with your moral compass, please ensure that you know your local police officers. Yes, too many of you as justices of the peace don't know your police officers. And I say that because you have a responsibility to help in holding.
Prince Moore, TVJ News.
The People's National Party continues to be critical of the leadership of the Andrew Holness government. It comes as the country continues to seek funds from the British government for the ravages of slavery and the lack of recognition of two past prime ministers of the country. The matters were again brought to the fore by opposition Senator Damian Crawford. Alshim Burke has the details.
As the debate around reparations for slavery intensifies, there's a call for the matter to be looked at from the local perspective first, before looking to England. According to 2023 estimates, damages owed by those responsible for the transatlantic chattel slavery is estimated at $101 trillion. 78 trillion is owed for what happened during slavery and 22 trillion for what occurred after the practice had been abolished. Of that total, Jamaica is owed $7.5 trillion. But speaking at a PNP awards ceremony recently, opposition Senator Damian Crawford says reparations should start from home, with the government allowing citizens to own a piece of the rock called Jamaica.
Because the land upon which is owned by government was owned by transfer from those who colonized this country and those who took advantage of those who were our forefathers in this country. So there should be some conversation about the distribution of land and the usage of land.
He says that was the aim of the PNP government, but they were chastised for the move.
Operation Pride was an effort to distribute land under PJ Patterson. And so therefore the People's National Party understood the importance of reversing some of the negatives of slavery by using land reform to create ownership and using ownership to create wealth. That is why I told them, let me give you 2 goats, so that they could learn from they were young what it means to own and what was the returns of ownership.
In the meantime, Mr. Crawford is calling for greater recognition of the efforts by 2 former PNP Prime Ministers, P.J. Patterson and Portia Simpson Miller.
With all I see them talking now, and I hear them say, oh, JLP build road. JLP don't build 1/10 of the road the P.J. Patterson have built. And even that 1/10 is roads that the PNP not only designed, but raised funds for. So when a man now want to leave out that the St. Thomas Road was funded by efforts and loans garnered by the People's National Party and designs left by the People's National Party, which was then reduced from what was envisioned by the People's National Party, and then implemented in a way that is the most disrespectful infrastructure effort that I have witnessed in my 42 years, as if it is a gift and not a duty of government.
As for Mrs. Simpson Miller,
we refuse to accept that when Portia Simpson took power, the country was in such a state that Andrew Holness in his campaign said bitter medicine, yes, that to expect the worst. And 4 years after Portia Simpson's stint, in his next campaign, he said prosperity time, expect the best. The only thing that happened between his utterance of bitter medicine and their prosperity was Portia Simpson government. There was nothing else.
Hal Shaneberg reporting for TVJ News.
And it's time for a break now, but stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News and thanks for staying with us. Shoppers at a supermarket in Santa Cruz, St. Elizabeth were this morning left in shock after gunmen stormed the facility. Reports are that about 8 minutes to 8 rather, 5 heavily armed men entered the establishment demanding cash. It's understood that the manager realized what was happening and attempted to pull his licensed firearm. However, he was attacked and his gun stolen. The would-be robbers made off in a waiting motor car. No money was stolen. The police are investigating. And it's now time for the Business Minute. Here's Alshane Burke.
The Bank of Jamaica has intervened in the foreign currency market for the 8th time since the start of the year. On Wednesday, the BOJ pumped $30 million into the market. 8 banks and 5 cambios were successful in their bids. Scotiabank, JN Bank and Grace Kennedy Currency Trading Services received the largest shares of the funds auctioned. Further afield, international travel is on the rise. AAA reports that airline bookings are up more than 200% compared to 2022. Europe and Canada are the most popular destinations, with Rome, Paris, Vancouver and Dublin as the hotspots. London in particular has a 350% increase in travellers compared to last year. As a result, hotel bookings are on the rise, up more than 300% compared to 2022. Higher demand for flights means higher airfares, but it doesn't seem to be deterring travellers from going abroad. And the Joe Biden administration is planning to tighten pollution controls on coal-fired power plants. The Environmental Protection Agency is proposing a new rule that would slash mercury and other pollution from the plant by up to 70%. It would also require them to monitor emissions in real time and supply that data to the EPA. The new proposed regulation would be the strongest update to mercury restrictions since 2012. The EPA estimates it would result in up to $3 billion in public health benefits over 10 years. And that's it for the Business Minute. I'm Hal Shaneberg.
And with the top regional and international stories, here's Karen Simpson.
In the region, the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association, CHTA, says international arrivals to the Caribbean for the first 2 months this year are behind by only 1% when compared to the same period in 2019. CHTA says, in contrast, Europe is registering a 25% lag, while Asia Pacific is 54% behind the pre-pandemic numbers. Total international inbound is trailing by 31% compared to the same period in 2019. On the international scene, the foreign ministers of longtime Middle Eastern rivals Iran and Saudi Arabia have held official talks for the first time since 2016. In a joint statement, they discussed reopening diplomatic missions within 2 months and resuming flights. The states agreed to restore ties in a deal brokered by China last month. It was seen as a sign of China's growing influence in the Middle East and a challenge to the dominant role of the US in the region. And French President Emmanuel Macron has urged his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping to help stop Russia's war in Ukraine. The French president, who is on a state visit, told Mr. Xi that he has the power to bring Russia to its senses and bring everyone back to the negotiating table. In response, Mr. Xi said their 2 countries had the ability and responsibility to safeguard world peace. But Russia said there were no prospects for a peaceful settlement so far, and its offensive would continue. And those were the top regional and international stories. I'm Carrie Simpson.
And it's time for another break, but stay with us. We'll be back with your midday sports report.